Hey everybody, we're back with angel number 3 in our No Sew Angel series. This is Patty. Isn't she so cute? We've got the kit for her coming here in just a couple of days, and I will put a link right below to where you can find that one if at the time that you're watching this, if it's not sold out. But also I will go through all the materials that you're going to need so that you can make this with your own stuff if you want to. And if you've seen the other 2 angels, then you'll recognize the technique is pretty much the same, but we've just done a different order of fabrics for her dress, and then we've got a little bit of a different embellishment thing going on here with this little shamrock. So this one's just a tad bit different, but the technique overall is the same. So let's go ahead and go through what you will need to make this angel. First, you will need a soft foam angel form, and this is just under 4 inches tall. We've got these in the Ornament Girls shop. Actually, at this exact moment that I'm recording this, we are holding on to them because our supply chain is kind of frozen up just a little bit in the last month due to coronavirus. However, we are going to have these available again very soon. I'm just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with our suppliers. So anyway, normally you can find this in our Ornament Girls shop, and they are made out of very soft polystyrene, so it's easy to push pins into, which is good because you're going to be pushing about 100 pins into this as you're making this angel. So about 100 straight pins. For embellishments, I've got some crystal beads. I've actually got 15 of this darker emerald green color and then 5 of a lighter lime green color. This is included in the kit, or you can find them in the Ornament Girls shop. We've got these exact same crystal beads. They are really pretty and sparkly, and they're slightly flattened, which is really nice for making quilted ornaments with, because a lot of the pretty side shows when you stick a pin through it, unlike a lot of other beads. So also you're going to need just one tiny little pearl. Now this is about 3 millimeters. This is going to be for putting on a halo, which is why we only need one of those. You are also going to need a mini shamrock or something similar. You might be able to find something in your local craft store in the floral department if you don't have this kit. And really any kind of pretty greenery would work, as long as it's got a stem that you can use to tuck into the wings of the angel. A couple of seconds ago, I mentioned the halo, so this is what we're using. I've got this filigree medallion that we're going to be using as a halo, and this is antique bronze. And we do carry these in the Ornament Girls shop as well. I've got about 24 inches of a green and white checked woven ribbon, and this is about 3/8 of an inch wide. And then I've also got some iridescent white string. This is a millimeter, I believe. You can find this in most craft stores, and this is what we're going to be actually using for the part of the wings, and then also to wrap the head of the angel with. And then finally, let's talk about the fabrics. So we're going to start with one 3-inch square. I'm using the darker shamrock fabric for this, and this is actually what's going to go on the bottom of the angel. On this one, I actually did the white, but I decided I would rather do it with the black. So now we're going to do the next one with the black, and in the kit, I included the black. And then also, from darkest to lightest, with all of the remaining fabric, these are all 2-inch squares. So for the bottom layer of the dress, I've got the black shamrock fabric again. Now I only used 7 pieces at the base of my angel, but we did include 10 of these in the kit because sometimes it can vary how many pieces we use across the layer. Bottom layer of this is this, and then we're moving on to the darker green, which again, 10 pieces are included in the kit. You probably won't use that many. You'll probably use 7 or so. Another 10 pieces of the next color down, which is the lighter green tonal. And then finally, I've got 24 pieces of the white shamrock fabric. And that was because I wanted a dark to light look going up the dress, which I think ended up with a really pretty effect. So that's all the fabric that you're going to need. Now you're also going to need a couple of tools. You're going to need a pair of scissors, a flexible tape measure, and then finally you're going to need some kind of clear and tacky craft glue. And this is the kind of glue that I like to use for this. It will dry clear. Also, when you are using it to glue the string around the head of the angel, it's nice because it really grabs quickly. The only problem with this kind of glue is if you get it on your clothes or anything, it never comes out. So just be really careful with your clothes or your sleeves of your shirt or whatever. I always like to keep a paper towel nearby so that I can wipe off the tip and keep things clean so I don't get anything all goopy. All right, guys, let's start. So you're going to begin with that base square that is 3 inches. And we're going to flip it over so that the pattern side is facing down. And then we're going to set the foam angel right on top. Just as centered as best as possible. You don't have to measure to get it perfectly, but just eyeball it and make sure it looks like it's sitting pretty center. And we're going to just flip up 2 of the corners to hold it and stick some pins in there to hold this in place. And I'm sticking the pin about 1/8 of an inch from the base of the cone. But I want to make sure when I put this pin in that I'm tilting it slightly on an angle up towards the head of the angel. It doesn't have to be on a major, huge angle, but you just want to make sure it doesn't come through the bottom and poke you from or through the foam. So just make sure you're kind of always watching that and keeping your pin slightly on an angle so that you don't get yourself. I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing over here. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing with the opposite 2 corners. Just like that. So I've got 4 pins in there, and now I'm going to, between each of those sections that are pinned, I'm going to stick a couple more pins. I want to get this really anchored down so that in a few minutes I can trim off the excess and we can start layering the pieces of the dress. So I just went 1 pin in between of each of the original 4 pins, and now I'm going to go through one more time and put 1 more pin between all the pins that are on there right now. And that should be enough to have everything really secure. Looks like I got some sections a little closer together than others. You don't have to worry about perfection here. You just need to make sure that it's anchored down pretty secure. So right now I'm just going back through and looking for any bubbles or any spaces that look like they could use an extra pin. Oops. All right, that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and just trim off this excess. And it doesn't have to look pretty because it's all gonna get covered up. You just wanna make sure that you have all that excess bulk gone so that it doesn't get in the way when we're adding the layers of the dress. And actually some smaller scissors would probably be really useful for this since it's so tiny and I've got these huge scissors that are kind of bulky. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the dress. So we're gonna be starting with the bottom of the dress and working our way up towards the head, and we're gonna be doing the bottom layer with the black shamrock fabric. So we're gonna start just by holding this with the pattern side facing down and then folding it in half. Like that, and I'm just lightly finger pressing the crease, and now I'm going to fold it in half one more time to make a tiny little square. And you'll see that the tiny square that we've created has 2 edges that are raw and then 2 edges that are folded, and one side has an opening of the folded edges. So one side's completely closed and the other side opens. So what we're going to do is flip this around so that the raw edges are facing up, the folded edges are facing down, and it's opening to the left like this. And I'm going to go ahead and pick up the angel, and starting anywhere, I'm going to place this at the base. Now you'll notice that I'm placing this so that the side corners are sitting just above, almost in line, but just a hair above the base of the cone. And remember, the open side is facing to the left, so I'm going to go ahead and take a pin and hold that side closed with a pin. Now, just like we did before when we were pinning on the base fabric, we want to make sure that when we push this pin in that we're angling it slightly upwards so that it doesn't come out the bottom and poke you. That's not fun. And now that is held in place. This side we'll leave unpinned for just a minute. We're going to take care of that in a second. So let's move to our second square of the same fabric. Remember, pattern side is going to be facing away, and we're going to fold it in half one time, finger pressing it, and then again finger pressing it. Now again, you want those raw edges to be facing up, and you want the folded edges to be facing down, and you want it to open to the left. And now we're going to place this right beside the first piece except that we want the left edge, the open edge of this, or the open side of this new square, to overlap slightly the right side of the square that we already put on the angel. And that way, when we pin this left side down of our new piece, it will hold down both this new piece and the right side of the first piece. So I'm doing the same exact thing, and I've lined this up pretty in line with the first piece so that those two side corners are lined up just above the base of the angel. Now here's the thing about these. You don't have to be perfectly exact about everything. It's okay if one square is just slightly below the other square. You can see how having it look kind of random and slightly uneven actually adds to the beauty of these. So don't worry about being exact. I'm kind of giving you directions of where to place everything just so you have guidelines, but not because you have to be exact, all right? So we're gonna just do this all the way around. We're gonna go ahead and add more squares covering each corner of our previous piece with the new piece, and then work our way all the way around until we come back to the beginning. So folding in half, and then again, raw edges facing up and the opening facing to the left. And then just covering that right corner with the new left edge of our next square. So I'll go ahead and speed up the video and work my way around the rest of the base until I get back to the beginning. All right, so I'm back to the very beginning of my layer, and you may notice when you get back to this point that the space that you've got left to fill isn't spaced perfectly with the neighboring pieces. Like maybe you've been like spacing out like, I don't know, 1/2 inch in between each of your points, and now you've got a little bit more crowded of an area. Don't worry about that. Just like I said a couple of minutes ago, it is totally okay if things are not perfect. You can always also adjust the neighboring squares if you need to. So if you needed a little more room here, you could always move this one over a little bit like that, just overlapping the previous one a little bit more. So you can always move things around. Luckily, nothing is permanent at all because it's just pinned. There's no sewing, nothing's been cut yet. Everything is all good. So you can totally adjust things. Alrighty, so that is layer 1. Now we're going to move to the dark green tonal fabric, and we're going to prepare the next square exactly the same. Every single piece until we get to the very last layer, everything is going to be done the same, or folded the same. So I'm folding it in half twice. I've got my opening to the left. And now we're just going to start between two of the pieces from layer 1 and then up slightly. So we're just kind of basically covering the pins from layer 1 and moving up the cone a little bit, probably about 1/2 inch. Again, you don't have to be exact. But I always like to start my first point of the next layer between two of the points from the layer below. And we're going to do this layer exactly like the first one, just moving our way around until we get back to the beginning. Now, something else I want to mention too, even though I like to start usually between two of the points from the layers below, you will never be able to keep every single piece going around the cone exactly between the two pieces from the layer below. And the reason for that is because we've got however many pieces we've got on the base here. It looks like we got 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But we're moving up a narrow piece of foam, which means that we're not going to have 8 pieces on all of the layers. It's going to be a lot less when we work our way up. And so there's no way to have each of these new points perfectly in between of the points from the layer below, because we are decreasing the amount of pieces that we're using as we work our way up. That is totally fine. Just like everything else. I feel like I'm going to keep saying this over and over. You do not have to be perfect. All right. And you'll see what I mean as I'm working my way up the angel. See how right here, instead of being between the 2 points from below, I'm just a little bit over. Totally fine. The other thing too I forgot to mention is that sometimes you might have a pin that still shows after you put the next layer on top of it. And again, don't worry too much about that. I mean, you do want to hide the pins as best you can, but it's impossible to hide all of them. You will have a pin or two show by the time that you reach the top of the angel. But this is why I like to embellish with beads. Not only is it pretty, it also hides little imperfections. So I'll be going back through at the end and removing or covering any pins with beads. So see how I've got an edge here that looks like it's a lot more to cover, but if I put my, and I just let it unfold, but if I put my next one here, it's totally not gonna cover it. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm actually going to move this one over a little bit more, like that. I think I like that better anyway. So I've covered a little bit more of the right corner of the previous square. And now that way, this one will be centered better over that kind of messy spot down there. I think that this is part of the reason I like making these so much, because you don't have to be perfect and it's easy to just make little adjustments to make it look better. You don't have to worry about being perfect and having perfect spacing and all that. Plus they're cute. All right, there is layer 2. We're going to do the same thing for layer 3, and we're moving now to the light green tonal fabric. And so right here, there's that pin that I talked about earlier. I'm actually going to cover it right now with my first piece of this layer, because I think that was my only pin that was showing on that layer. So that way I don't have to worry about it anymore. Alrighty, layer 3 is all done. So we're switching now to the last fabric, which is the white with the shamrocks. And we're gonna do the last 3 layers with this fabric. So the next 2 layers, layers 4 and 5, will be done exactly like the first 3 layers. And then we're gonna change things up just slightly for the top, because we will be at the top of the cone. I'm just looking to see if there's anything that looks hard to cover up later. So I think I'll start right here. All right, one more layer just like that, and then we will, like I said, change things up because we will have arrived at the head by that point. I got a pin showing there. That's okay. I'll show you how I'm going to fix that. Whoops, I don't need another pin yet. Alrighty, so we are now near the top. If we put the last layer on just like we did all the other layers, we'll have fabric going up the head, which we don't want. We want this to be left blank so that we can glue that string on there and not have any bulkiness. So what we're gonna do is fold our next layer of fabric a little bit differently. Rather than folding it in half square, we're actually gonna fold it in half diagonally like this. And then do the same exact thing one more time. So we've created instead a little mini triangle. And that way, when we go to lay this on, the top edge can go kind of flatter around the base of her head. And so what we're going to do is just kind of work our way around. Now with this last layer also, it's not quite as exact, not that any of it was exact, but there may have to be like a few additional pieces added in here and there to help hide any of those last remaining edges and pins. But we just kind of will work our way around and do what we can and cover things up as best as we can and then see where that leaves us. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and start. I'm just going to start anywhere. And my first piece, I kind of need to go a little lower, so that's what I'm going to do. Let me turn this sideways so that you can see. Sometimes it's hard to do this and be able to see what I'm doing and face it up towards the camera at the same time. So my points here, the edges are kind of going, instead of going up and around her neck, they're pointing down a little bit, but that's okay. I'm not worried about it because I know that when I add a couple more pieces on, I'll be able to hide that. Oh, and one last thing. When you're pinning up here, you're going to be doing the opposite as what you were doing down here. Instead of pinning up, you want to pin down for the same reason, because you're at a narrow spot here, and if you pin straight through, it might come out the other side and get you. So keep your pin on a downward angle in order to not prick yourself out the other side. So this was the piece I just put on. I'm just going to go beside it. Pinning down. You can see the next little section here, I've got a little bit of wonkiness going on and I'm going to have to try to cover. So let me see if I can think of the best way to do this. Oh, actually it's not that bad. So what I'm doing here is I pinned the left side of this and I'm wrapping it up around her neck and I'm sort of pulling up a little bit on the right side, which is kind of bunching it up here just a little. I don't want to bunch it too much, but you can have a little bit of bunching happen as long as you don't go up onto the head. So that's why the bunching will happen, because you're trying to keep it from going up onto the head. That is perfectly okay. If you've got a little bit of a crinkle right in the fabric, it's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. But just make sure that you don't have the fabric going up and over the head. So it looks like I've only got a couple more pieces to go. I can see a spot there where I'm going to need to put some beads, hide those pins. Alrighty, I think I've got one piece to go and I will be done. I'm adding an extra pin up here because I didn't really pin close enough to the corner. Maybe two more pieces. I'm trying to decide, do I want to stick another one in there or not? I don't think I do. I think I'm just going to cover that with beads. The other thing too, okay, so when you get to this point, there's going to be pins showing, obviously, because we've, pinned the last couple of triangles into place and there's nothing covering them. And that is okay. You're probably going to have a side on here that's uglier than the other side, and that's going to be what we designate as the back of the angel, because we're going to be putting the wings and everything on and you'll never see it. To me, I think this is going to be my ugly side because I've got a little bit of messiness going on up there. And then over here, it's a lot smoother. I do have some fabric strings going on. And I do want to pin down the corner of that piece a little bit better. Now, even on your good side, you're going to have pins still showing, but we're going to be doing some beads around the neck like I've done here. That's why I do that, to hide those corners. So we're going to do that here, but this side is actually not too messy. So I'm thinking that the front of my angel is going to be well, this is definitely going to be the back for sure. That's kind of a mess. So anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to start working on that iridescent cord. So I'm just kind of pushing any of these like loose edges that are sort of sticking up a little bit. I'm just kind of giving them a press down to get them out of the way. And also I want to get rid of all these little loose strings that are coming out of the fabric because we don't want them to get stuck up into the string that we're gluing on. We want them to be out of the way. It's like a can of worms. Once you pull one string out, they just keep on coming. All right, so this is my front. That means I'm going to start gluing my string on the back, and I'm going to wrap it up and around and then end at the top. So first of all, I'm getting my string ready here and making sure it's untangled so that it'll be easy to wrap around the angel. I'm going to go ahead and grab my glue. And what I like to do here is you're going to end up having to add more glue when you're about, I don't know, quarter or half of the way up the head. But I like to draw little lines like this, starting at the base and just going up about halfway up the head or so. And this will give the string something to grab onto as I'm working my way around. And I'm going to start at my back and lay the end of the string at the base like this. And now the first one I'm just going to wrap around like this the first time around the head. But once I've got it grabbed on, which it is now, I'm actually going to hold the string with my left hand, and if you're right-handed and you want to do it the other way, that's fine. But with the opposite hand, I'm going to just spin the angel. I find it easier to wrap the head when you spin the angel and not try to move your string hand. And if you just spin her, you can let the string fall into place as you go. Alrighty, I'm running out of glue, so I'm going to go ahead and add some more glue on there. Now when you get up to the point where you're going back, like you've reached past the widest part of the head, then you're probably going to have to help it a little bit by holding it, because see how it'll try to slide on you because you're going back to a narrower part of the head. So you might have to use your other finger to just kind of hold it in place. You're probably going to get a little bit of glue on your fingers. My glue's already starting to dry, so I'll add a little bit more up here. And so I'm still spinning the angel, but definitely have to give it a little more help at this point. And this is like one of the reasons I prefer using this Beacons glue instead of hot glue, because you're basically having to stick your hands into this. You can see I'm getting lots of glue on myself. You don't want to do that if it's hot. So this is a little more comfortable. Alrighty, and then when you get to the top, we're just gonna kind of fill in the hole the best you can, and then I'm just pushing a little bit more down in there. Now it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to be putting a halo on top. So if you've got an imperfect ending, don't stress. I'm going to go ahead and snip off the excess, and actually I'm going to stick a tiny little bit of glue and see if I can get that to lay down a little bit better. I don't know if I got any glue out. There we go. My fingers are all sticky now. Let's hold it down for a second. Alrighty, so we're gonna move on to doing the hanger and the wings. We're gonna cut off about 9 or 10 inches or so for a hanger, first of all. And we're gonna stick a pin through both ends. And this is very tiny, so you want to make sure the pin goes through both ends. And now spin your angel around to the back, whatever's the ugly side. And we're going to come down maybe about a half of an inch or so from the neck area and pin, let's see, I just want to make sure I'm picking the right spot here. and then pin straight down into her body. Just like that. And just kind of aim your hanger so that it's facing up. And I'm going to set that aside. And now we're going to work on the under layer of her wings, which is I did with another little piece of this. So you don't have to cut a piece off for this. We're just going to work right off the long piece and then cut it after we're done making those little wings. I'm sticking the pin through the end of it. And I'm going to make about 6 loops. And let's see, I'm looping about, I don't know, I think that's about 3 inches. I'll actually measure it really quick. So it's about 3.5 inches. And I'm gonna pin again, and I'm just gonna keep doing this. So looping the same amount, and you can keep on using the tape measure if you wanna make sure your loops are perfect. I tend to not worry too much about getting them perfect. I just like to eyeball it. Oh, whoops, alrighty. And then when you get to the end and your loops are all done, I'm just gonna make sure they look like they're pretty even before I cut. You can go ahead and cut off the extra. Make sure you don't cut your loops that you made. And we're gonna pin that right on top of the pin from the hanger. Again, make sure you point it downwards. Alrighty, now we're gonna make a second layer of the wings with the green checked ribbon. And we're gonna do that the exact same way. And it's a little bit easier with ribbon than it is with that string to loop and pin. And if you got any excess, you can just trim it off. I forgot what I was doing for a second. I was like trying to make a bow for the top of a round ornament. So we want to kind of have it like this so that you've got 3 loops on one side and 3 loops on the other. So we're going to pin this right on top of that other set of wings, but we don't want to push it all the way down just yet. So I'm going to just put it right on top of that other pin, but then leave it sticking up just a little bit like that. Like maybe, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch or so. Because we want to actually stick that shamrock in there a little bit, and then also add a little bit of glue inside there as well to help hold everything in place. So I've got it sitting like that. And now this is a matter of personal preference where you want your little shamrock to be sitting on the angel. I kind of liked it sitting, I'm messing up my wings. I kind of liked it sitting like that. So it was sticking out a little bit, but it wasn't like way out there. Which means you want to kind of figure out where you want it, and then you want to trim off any excess of the stem. Now, don't trim off, don't accidentally trim off too much because you can't get it back once you trim it. You can always trim off a little more if you need to, but you can't get it back. So I'm just using my finger to find where I want this to be, and then, all right, I'm going to hold it where I want to trim it. It's very easy to cut. You probably shouldn't use fabric scissors for that. And let me just see if I like that. Yeah, I think I do. Alrighty, so now that I've got this pretty much set up and ready to go, I'm gonna grab my glue again. And I'm going to stick this in there and just put a dollop of glue right there at the base of my pin, right where I'm about to stick this. And I'm also going to go ahead and lay the end of my shamrock right in there, right in that glue. Whoops. And then let's see if I can do this facing towards the camera so you can see it and holding it with my other hand. I'm going to go ahead and push that all the way down. I lost my shamrock. Let's try that again. This is not usually the angle that I hold this when I'm doing these. I actually have a habit of holding everything really close to me, like in my lap when I'm doing these. So it's really hard to hold it out in front of me for the camera. All right, there we go. Now we're gonna let that dry a little bit. Once it's dry, you'll be able to kind of shift around your shamrock or whatever it is that you're using a little bit. And these actually, the ones that came in the kit are actually a little bit bendy. So you can just kind of move things around a little bit once it's dry and put the placement where you want it. And I'm also going to fluff up my wings a little bit. Alrighty, so while that is drying, we can go ahead and just push it in a little bit more. We can go ahead and do the halo and then also decorate the dress with the beads. So this is the fun part, no more gluing. Hooray! Let's do the halo first. So you're gonna need that little pearl bead. I probably kicked it across my table somewhere. Who knows where it's at? There it is. Okay, I've made a huge mess. So we want to grab a pin and we're gonna go ahead and stick one of the dark green crystals onto it and then the halo. And then I'm going to go ahead and stick another one of the dark green crystals on there. And then finally the pearl bead. And the pearl bead's just gonna give it a little bit of height. And then that way when we stick it into her head, it will sit off of her head just a little bit. So I'm taking this now and I'm gonna stick this right up in that top area, right where my string ended, right in that neighborhood. But I do want to make sure that I tilt my pin on a slight angle towards the front so that this will sit on a little bit of an angle on top of her head. Rather than just sitting flat on top, we want it to sit kind of like on an angle so it sits back a little bit. So just like that. And now all we have left to do is put some of these other beads on here. So first I'm gonna start with around the base of her neck. And I like to just do like one right in the center and then two beside it. That's what I typically do. However, it didn't work out that way on my original one. I ended up having to put, well, let's see, 5 of them across the top because I had some messiness that I needed to cover. So you may have to do that and that's totally okay. I'm thinking here, I actually don't have very much messiness in the front of this at all. It was all in the back. But I'm just gonna do, well, actually, you know what? I think I am gonna do 5 because I've got these 2 side pins way out here on the sides that are still there. So I think I will go ahead and do 5. And again, I'm making sure to angle these downward a little bit so that I don't poke myself, although there's a lot going on now, so the chances of the pin reaching all the way through is probably a little bit more slim. That one's too high. So actually, I'm going to pull this pin out. And then stick that pin in. We'll do the same back here. There we go, that's pretty. Alrighty, and now I'm just gonna go through the dress. I like to do this very randomly. I don't really ever have any kind of like pattern or anything in mind when I'm pinning these beads on. I like to, first of all, make sure that I've covered up any pins that are showing and any ugliness. So I've got that here. This is probably my worst spot to cover. So what I'm gonna do first of all is just, I'm sort of tugging that up just a little bit because see how I've got an edge showing here? I wanna make that as hidden as possible. So I'm gonna come up here and pin really close to the edge so that you can't see that raw edge anymore. And this is probably gonna be one of those, well, that actually looks pretty good. Now right here, I've got the same problem. I don't even think that pin is necessary. What I'm gonna do instead is I am going to pin over here instead on those raw edges, really close to the edge. And that spot is still iffy looking, so I'm gonna put 2 beads near each other on that spot. I've got a string too, let's get rid of that. There we go. So let's see. Oh, there's another couple pins. So I have more spots here than I realized. Oh, and I almost forgot. I want to put a bead on the back of her wings as well and hide that last pin. So now I'm just randomly placing them. I've got a few beads left. I don't typically like to put tons of beads on the back because it's the back, but I do like to put a couple. Alrighty, the only place I'm not loving right now is right there. I feel like it's a little too much because we've got all these beads kind of bunched up in one spot. So I'm gonna play with that a little bit. All right, I think I like that a little bit better. I do love doing groups of 2. It's just that we had like a lot going on right there, and I think removing this one kind of helped. So I might also move this one. And now I'm just being a little bit of a perfectionist. There we go. I think this balances that out a little bit. All right, I might keep playing with it, but you get the idea. This part's actually pretty fun. Oh, I have a whole nother bead over here. I think we'll move this over here to the back. Alrighty, now I think I'm done. All right, guys, if you've got any questions about this, please let me know. Just leave them in the comments and I will help you out the best that I can. I hope that you enjoyed making this and that you will send me pictures of what you've made. I've put all relevant links below. At the time that you're watching this, we might be sold out of the kit. The last kit that we put for sale sold out in, I put it up in 2 batches and we had 200 of them, and the first batch was gone in about 21 minutes and the second batch was gone in 9 minutes. So at the time that you're watching this, we may not have the kit available anymore, but like I explained in the beginning of the video, you can totally use your own materials and fabrics and all that stuff and make lots of different versions of this. All right, thank you so much for watching and happy ornamenting.